Yeah, it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. And I'm just going to turn it over to you. You go for it. There'll be more people that will join in.
Okay.
I actually, when I talked to Joanne yesterday, and she was kind of relieved that it was today instead of Tuesday because she couldn't have watched you on Tuesday. So for some people, it worked out just fine. How about that?
All right,
So,
great.
but we're just glad to have you. Thank you, Larry.
I
It's all
appreciate
on you
it. Thanks,
now.
Victoria. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you very much for joining us for this a rescheduled class on Build a Better Plate. So I intentionally left the title of this slightly ambiguous. So if we're looking to how to build a beautiful chef-inspired plate, we will definitely address that. I'll give you some of the tips. And at some point when I get down to Georgia, this would be a really fun one for us to do in person and actually do something that I call platescaping. And just think about the same way that an artist would address his canvas. We chefs, we try to look at the same way. We're looking for balance. We're looking for symmetry. I've talked about the architecture of food, and that really has to do with the structure and the engineering of the food and the food items on it. But Build a Better Plate has so many different aspects to it. And what I want to explore with you a little bit is let's think a little bit about where our food comes from before it hits our plate, whether that's at home, whether it's a picnic, whether it's a simple lunch that we're putting together for ourselves or our family, whether it's an elaborate meal that we're looking to do, or whether we're trying out a new recipe that mimics the cover of Bon Appetit. So, but there is so much more that goes into it. And this class in particular really challenged me to bring in all of my years of experience in not only in front of the house, what does the food look like? How is the food presented to the guest? And more importantly, how is it put together? What goes into it? So I hope it will cause you to pause and think a little bit about how do we think about the plate of food that's put in front of us at a restaurant, or whether we're constructing it at home. So I just spent a week in Washington, D.C., and I really needed a museum fix, and I just wasn't prepared to go all the way to Paris and the Louvre for that this time. So I spent a lot of time at the Museum of Natural History and got some tremendous inspiration there from the natural side of it. Spent a lot of time at the Botanical Garden and met with some of the docents there and really got inspired on the botanical side of it. And they have a magnificent new exhibit that really talks about food and food preparation and food preservation. And all of that is sort of on a continuum of what we do all the time. And I'm constantly working through what is my approach to food? How do I think about food? What is my grand formula for what makes food pleasant? Certainly, you want it to look good. And a lot of that is going to be what we talk about today. It has to smell good. And that's just using fresh ingredients, seasonal ingredients. It has to taste good. If you follow a recipe that is well tested and trusted, you're probably going to end up with something that tastes very good. And it needs to sound good also. Think about the sound of deep frying French fries or the sound of bacon cooking. It sounds like applause. The food obviously hits all of our senses. So we're going to tap into all of that. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through some of the analytical stuff just to get your brains thinking a little bit. And then we'll move into how do we make a plate look really beautiful. So please keep your questions coming. Send them through chat. I'll make sure I send you some recipes for our presentation as well. But let's take a look at what it means to build a better plate. And I'll pull up our PowerPoint here and we will get started. So what do I mean by build a better plate? Well, certainly we want our food to hit all of our senses. As a matter of fact, that for me is the guide to a well-prepared meal. Has it been prepared with attention and love, or was it just thrown together? Did we really think about the nutritional aspect of it? Did we think about the economic aspect of it? Food has a very political aspect to it. If you've been to the grocery store, you know that the geopolitical, economic impact is really impacting the price of food in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time. And we're going to explore some of those, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff and how do we make a chef's looking plate. So the first thing I want to address is what is food? Well, if I ask that question, and I would pose that question to you, and feel free to enter that into the chat. What is food? Certainly it's nutrition, it's vitamins, it's minerals, it's texture, it's taste, it's color, it is family, it's entertaining. So for some people, it's chaos. Some people, it's too much effort, etc. But it's really more than just fuel, as you can see there from that collage. And the other really interesting things about it is, can we make food look this beautiful? Well, yes, of course we can. There are lots and lots of secrets in there. We've got techniques of what we call shingling there. We certainly have lots and lots of color going on. That's certainly the first thing. I can almost smell that caviar or that lobster on the plate. Those are little drops of deglazed, reduced balsamic vinegar there. There's some edible flowers in there. There's sprigs of fresh herbs. There's avocado. So certainly we have texture and wonderful colors. The circle that looks sort of like a lime or a lemon wheel over on the left, that's actually an avocado puree. And it was just put down with the back of a spoon and then created some spokes on it. So we can create beautiful looking food with very, very simple aspects to it. Or we can just go to the local convenience store, or we can hit our fast food restaurant and just pile it on. One of the things that fast food manufacturers and food engineers that create some of these very tantalizing foods, they know exactly how to tap into it. They have determined what that crunch factor is. I happen to love crunchy food, and I think that texture is one of the most important things. If you move away from being primarily a meat and potatoes eater, what you really miss are those very, very familiar textures. So the flavor, the texture, the color, the aroma of French fries, in some respects, from a chef's perspective, it's the perfect food. Now, is it good for us every single day? Absolutely not. Does it make a better plate? Well, it sure does. Potato chips are my downfall, pretzels as well. Pretzels are kind of boring, to tell you the truth. Potato chips, they have come out with every flavor, every different type of crunch and combinations of them. I'm really kind of surprised that somebody hasn't done the same with flavored pretzels. So if you have any entrepreneurs out there, that might be a good area to move into. Things like ice cream, they know that sugar, we have an innate desire for sugar, as do almost every animal on earth. They naturally want to seek that out. So these all go into what we might think of as a better plate, but nutritionally not so good. Now, if we take the time and energy to put together a beautiful plate that is a nutritional and healthy plate, this is what it might look like as well. This can be very challenging. Shopping for fruits and vegetables is a lot more complicated than just pulling a box of sour cream and chai flavored potato chips or something off of the snack aisle. Takes a little bit more time. So we need to think about mindful eating. So let's slow down a little bit and think about, how do we actually make a plate that is better nutritionally as well as all the other aspects. This is such a powerful quote. I keep this on my refrigerator, particularly when I'm feeling a little bit heavy, shall we say. But the food you eat can be the safest and most powerful form of medicine, or the slowest form of poison. And that is so true. And I hope that you will perhaps print this. I'll send this to you, and you keep it around and share it with your family and your friends, because it is so true. And it may sound very, very academic, but the reality is this is just the simplest idea that we can actually think of. So we need to be mindful of, how are we setting our plate? What are we putting on our plate? What are we feeding those people that we love? Da Vinci understood this. This is the famous Vitruvian man here, and he understood that balance was really, really important in our lives. And I came across this recently, and I absolutely just love this, taking a classic and sort of showing where we have evolved or devolved into as well. I've made postcards of these, and I give them out to kids. I have to do a little bit of airbrushing there for the young kids, but they all understand that we've got to think about what we're putting into our body. Is it medicine or is it poison? So here's the academic part of it. This is that healthy eating plate, and this is the most recent government interpretation and helpful hint for us in eating healthy. And we've all seen this. We were raised with the 3 square meals a day, and we were a meat and potato society. And this really came out of World War II. We had been denied a lot of our whole muscle cuts of meat because of rationing. And we wanted meat, and we wanted potatoes to go with that. The carbohydrates, we became addicted to them. So this is the new guideline here. At least half of your plate should be some type of vegetable, including some fruits. Whole grains, we've done a whole class, or we'll do a whole class on grains and how do we incorporate them into our diet. And grains for a lot of people are challenging. They know they're supposed to be eating more of them. This morning, I had a choice of grabbing a bagel or making some quinoa. Well, I ended up making some sweet quinoa, and it actually took less time than getting the bagel out, toasting the bagel, and putting a smear of cream cheese on it. So grains are a really important part of it. We know that they bring all kinds of nutrition and vitamins and minerals. Certainly quinoa is the perfect food, the most complete food that we really have access to. And then a healthy protein. This is going to be a lot easier if meat and proteins continue to stay as expensive as they are. Chicken is up 13, 14%. Meat has just become a luxury item. So we need to choose our proteins a lot more wisely to make that better plate. So those of you that have ever taken a psychology class or a philosophy class, you may recognize this. Now, you know, Freud is okay for certain people. Carl Jung is okay for certain people. But my hero is Maslow. And Abraham Maslow was another one of those philosophers, psychiatrists, psychologists. And he has the most wonderful theory, and this is the hierarchy of needs. And I use this every single day subconsciously. As a matter of fact, it was so powerful that I did this on my final paper for my master's program from a restaurant perspective. So the idea behind this is at the very bottom, we all need these basic physiological needs. We have a need for sleep and shelter and air and water and certainly food. And without those, we're going to cease to exist. Once those needs are satisfied, we can move up this hierarchy of needs here to thinking about our safety, our personal safety. Do we have a job that we like that is going to be there tomorrow? What are our resources? Do we have the clothes? Do we have the personal needs that we all require? Is our health good? What are we doing for that? And, you know, do we have a roof over our heads? Once those needs are satisfied, then we can move into something that's a little bit more intimate here, our love and belonging. Everybody wants to belong to a group. Everyone wants to be recognized by someone and loved by someone. And that could be just friendship. It certainly could be intimate relationships. It could be our family or even our extended families. Our sense of connection, that could be our church groups or our social groups or when we're meeting together like this. And then we move up a little bit and we have the sense of esteem. We all want to have that sense of self-esteem. We want to be respected by our peers. We'd like to have that recognition and the freedom to be yourself or be the most that you can be. And then there are these occasional moments and people that are lucky enough to have this self-actualization, this desire to become more or everything that you're capable of becoming. And I can say in all my years in the food service industry that I've bounced back and forth behind this hierarchy. There are times when I just simply need something to eat. A burger will do that. And that's sort of at the bottom there. There are other times when I'm trying to build a beautiful plate or a very beautiful banquet that I want and long for that esteem, that respect, that recognition. And at the end of the day, for me, it's really, have I done everything that I can? Have I not only produced the best plate that I can, but do the guests also enjoy it as well? So just one way to think about it. There is certainly broad disagreement about what are their needs. Food consumption for some people is a challenge all over the world. For other people, it's a form of self-expression. And we think about the senses that we all share across the species, and everyone sort of thinks the same way about just basic needs, but what about the higher needs? So another way to look at building a better plate is to think about what goes into the food system. And if you think about it, whether it's a block of cheese or whether it's eggs or whether it's a frozen meal, all of our food goes through some aspect of this system. And if you look at this from a geopolitical economic standpoint, boy, there are real disruptions. We've been hearing this expression about disruptions in the food chain. Well, here is exactly where they can happen. So I rely on these things, these processes, these systematic items here to make sure that I'm producing a meal, whether it's for a family of 4 or whether it's for 400 people. So at any point you can pick this up. We look at the top one on the left there, the food production. We need to be thankful to the people that produce our food. And we ran into that with the beginning of COVID-19. Many people that were in food production were declared essential workers. We saw that with the baby formula recently, how it could really create disruption on it. Getting enough people to actually grow it, to harvest it, to process it is really an important part of it. Then we need to process it. We need to take the wheat and we need to grind it into flour. The flour needs to be transformed or processed into a loaf of bread. Beef, the same type of thing. One of the biggest reasons why beef has become so expensive is the processing of it. We just don't have the people to do that. The distribution of it, we know that the last mile of distribution is the most challenging. We may rely upon Amazon for a loaf of bread or a bag of chips, but that last mile is probably the most expensive. And certainly with gas prices, everybody that has been jumping on the delivery bandwagon is going to be reconsidering how do they distribute our food. Then we have the retail market. We go to our grocery store and we expect the shelves to be full. That's what they're there for. We've had almost 100 years of grocery stores, and they started with 1,400 items in some of the earliest stores. Now we have over 140,000 items in an average store. So we're always distressed when we see our favorite products either out of stock or backstocked or prices increasing exponentially as we're seeing. Then comes our part, the consumption of it. And this happens all over the world. And that's what we're really going to be talking about. And then we'll talk a little bit about the waste recovery, the waste in the restaurant business. Anybody who has friends or relatives that have worked in the food service industry, you'd be horrified to go behind the scenes and see how much waste there is. There's just so much food waste out there. It really becomes a challenge, and we're trying to find ways to reduce that, certainly. Another way to look at it, and I may have shown you this before, but this is a great way to look at lots of life's problems here. And it's a model called PESTLE. And PESTLE stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal aspects. And it's a fairly academic way, but really useful way to look at almost any type of challenge. So if you put in anything from world hunger to food supply distributions, you could look at this in building a business, opening up a new business. All these aspects fit into this one way or the other. So let me go through and show you some of these different aspects that we may not think about every day to just bring your awareness up a little bit. So the food that we put on our plate, we obviously want it to fulfill our senses, but there are also some things that I want you to think about that go into it before we actually even serve and sit down to enjoy it. And we'll look at some of the social aspects, the biological aspects. I'll show you some really fun technological changes that have happened in the industry. If we're just trying to satisfy our hunger, if we're just looking for something that's tasty, that's fine. But we also might be having psychological aspects. Are we eating to live, or are we living to eat there? So we know that the food that goes into our body is our fuel, but it's so much more than that. So I want you to think about what goes into your choice of food or dinner, or what are you going to have for lunch, for instance. You look at all of these, and at any given time, I could itemize half a dozen different things that go along with this. The peer pressure. I'm working with some school districts right now, and boy, can peer pressure, even with third graders, really have an effect. It's like, oh, you eat that? No, we never eat that. That's too weird, or we never serve that in our family. You shouldn't eat that. So peer pressure can make a lasting impression on our food choices. Think about the foods that either your mother or your father, your grandfather, your grandmother liked or didn't like. And do you dislike them or like them? And what's the reason behind that? Cultural is a magnificent reason for food choices. We think about all the access that we have. I was speaking with some of you, and you talked about some of your backgrounds and your cultural backgrounds, and it's so wonderful because we have access to all these wonderful ingredients. There are very, very few cuisines that I haven't experienced. I'm constantly looking to mix and match them. It's really what we call food fusion. The availability, boy, if you're looking to make a rhubarb pie, as somebody was, the challenge of just getting that. Is it going to be in the store? What is your skill level? You don't have to be a classically trained chef to make good food, but can you make a basic loaf of bread? Can you make a perfect omelet? A lot of those affect, are we going to have omelets for brunch, or are we going to have a quiche? They're very, very different skills that we think about. What are the food trends? Are we on Korean? Are we on North African? Are we on Polynesian? Do you have these new items? I am amazed at the influx of Indian foods in particular in the grocery store. So particularly when you go to the rice-a-roni and the pasta section, look at all the new entries into the grocery market. Regional variations, boy, this is actually some of my most popular classes on the legendary foods of Europe, or the foods of South America, or the foods of China, these regional variations. Even here in the United States, the Southern cooking is very different than New England cooking, or the Southwest cooking, or Pacific Northwest. So those regional variations have a huge impact on what we're going to put into building a better plate. Sometimes it just comes down to personal choice. Do you like this? Do you not like it? Does the family like it? Are there things that you don't serve, or things that you don't eat because of your own choices? I know for me, there are several items I just don't usually cook for groups of people. And I realize after analysis that, wow, it's because I don't like them. So you have to think about those choices when you put together a really, really a beautiful plate for other people. How about religious and moral beliefs? We have kosher, we have halal, we have Lenten foods. We have some foods and religions that are forbidden. We have some beverages that are forbidden. Wine, caffeine, for instance. Can we store it properly? Nobody that goes to Costco doesn't have a big refrigerator or an extra freezer just because the way things are packaged. Cost is a huge factor as well. We're going to see a lot of people that are really going to have some disruptions in their choices of food based upon the cost of things. And then lastly, our health. Are we eating for our health? Is it the poison we're putting into our system, or is it medicine? So let's break out some of those items that we were talking about. Certainly food has been used politically in many, many ways. The food policies, it affects everybody from the farmers to the food processors to the wholesalers, retailers, and even consumers. I'll give you a classic example. Foie gras, which is fattened duck liver, beloved by the French and many other peoples. It became politicized in this country to the point where cities like San Francisco and Seattle actually banned the sale in restaurants for this. Imagine if they did the same thing with something like broccoli or quinoa. It could be really interesting. There are lots of books written about this, and I'm working on a new presentation that is going to dabble a little bit in the politics of food, but food has always been used actually as a weapon and a source of power. If you control the food source, this is going back to the Egyptians and the grains, to the Nazis, to the English and the Irish potato famine. We saw it even recently. The picture down at the bottom are some satellite pictures of Russia stealing Ukrainian grain. So we use food in very, very strange and powerful and sometimes political ways as well. I spent a little bit more time at the FDR Memorial when I was in Washington, D.C. And I remember this in high school. And this was the Economic Bill of Rights. And this was from FDR during World War II. And he came out with a new list of sort of the rights of man, if you will. And if you look at the second and third one there, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living. These are wonderful thoughts that certainly go into how do we build a better plate given all of these challenges that we have. A couple of wonderful books there if you enjoy this topic as well. The Future of Food. This inspired me to build that 3-part on food revolutions and food of the future. Ended up being a class called Dinner for 9 Billion People. So there's some wonderful things out there. Think about all the things that go into the political side of it. And we are certainly going to see food as a much more political item. Again, just look at the baby formula challenge that we've had. So we have to put these all together in an interesting way there. We need to be literate about our food. What are we eating? Are we reading labels? Are we reading about trends? Are we reading about recalls and things like that? So we need to be literate about food. This is what I spent my entire career in culinary education about. We need to understand the financial aspects. Boy, a day doesn't go by when I'm at the grocery store, and if I see a mother or grandmother with a young child, I'm always talking about inflation and do they understand it, and are the parents educating their kids on how to buy better. And it usually turns into a long conversation where we're exchanging recipes and things like that, and budget tips also. This is just sort of an idea of what goes into the production that we need for our food. The US, for instance, spends $218 billion producing, transporting, and discarding food that isn't eaten. Globally, 1.4 billion hectares of land are used to produce. So the different countries are what we call our carbon footprint, certainly go into the politics of this as well. Just to give you a little insight into our industry, the restaurant industry, boy, they are really, really hurting. First it was COVID, and now it's rising prices and wages. But we look at some of these challenges, and certainly the biggest part of this is going to be the price increases, the exponential inflation that we're going through. On the environmental side, it's always interesting. We talk about climate change and things like that. And certainly our environmental and what we're doing to the planet is going to be very important in how we feed those 9 billion people. Here are some examples of school lunch in the 80s. I certainly remember that. School lunch in 2019 here. Certainly it's more healthful. It's much more geared towards setting a better plate. Kids are much more in tune to the look of it. Kids will reject food just based upon look. We know this. They won't even try some foods. And that really starts at the family. Most of us, when we were sitting down to dinner, you ate what was put in front of you and you liked it and you thanked mom, that's for sure. So we have all these charts and statistics. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we see lots of little things can really tick the price of food. They can be political, they can be socioeconomic, they can be environmental. Lots and lots of changes go into affecting the price of our food. Now, when we were talking about the economics of food here, this is probably what we remember here is our home economics. And many of you probably went through these classes and they were about etiquette and how to stretch your budget and how to prepare food wisely for your family. But things have certainly changed with that. The economics of our food system have really, really been disrupted. It goes into what is going to look like a better plate. And is it only about economics? No, it's so much more than that. Food costs for restaurateurs, for chefs, and for homemakers is really, really difficult. It is becoming a real challenge. And this isn't something where we can suddenly plant a victory garden or suddenly start raising our own cattle or raising goats or sheep for our own milk. These are things that we've come to rely upon. And these disruptions can really be pretty powerful. Certainly as a chef working in restaurants all of my life, I've certainly been aware of this. This is an annual report that comes out of the National Restaurant Association. I have these going back at least 20 years now, and the numbers continue to surprise me. The restaurant industry, you may know, is the second largest industry in the United States after the government. So it's important, and we were hit really hard during COVID, and we're certainly going through that as well. The numbers are staggering here. We are expected to reach $898 billion in sales. And that continues to be pretty strong, even though we've lost lots and lots of restaurants, certainly independent restaurants. The industry employs 400,000 people here. We are expected to, the growth is 400,000 people. A lot of those jobs are never coming back. But if you look at your restaurants, yes, the service is slower. Yes, you're getting your fast food even slower. It's just we can't find the employees for this. And food and labor and occupancy cost are all going into that. I saw that in the hotels and the restaurants when I was traveling. We are certainly going to see some implications of this as families start to travel. They're going to be looking for quick, fast service to appease the kids, and they may be very disappointed. So moving on to the S in pestle here, how does culture and society influence your diet? This was a wonderful banquet buffet that I did a couple of months ago here. And I just had all these wonderful people that brought all these wonderful traditional dishes from each of their cultures. And we just had a wonderful evening with it. So these social factors that we go into it, that we've looked at, the culture, what is your lifestyle? I just read an article that many people going back to work, they're having challenges when it comes to lunch. Going out to lunch has always been a challenge for people that work in offices. Food has gotten more expensive. Delivery has increased the cost on that as well. Well, people are looking for the social food. Eating together has always been a wonderful social experience. I know a few other experiences when we come together in a social setting that can be so incredibly powerful. All the foods that we look at, the international foods, the variety of regional foods, when we talked about the legendary foods of Italy or Spain and France, it's not just one cuisine. Just like in the United States, we have all these wonderful different cultures that spread all kinds of wonderful food traditions. Much of the world is going hungry. This is something that we just don't seem to be talking about. And every couple of years, we have these horrible stories of famine and drought and hunger that are going on in the world. We are a wealthy nation. We always give when we can, but it's something that we need to always think about when we're building our own plate. And for me, when I'm going in and consulting restaurants, if they want to save money, the number one tip that I give them before anything else is you've got to cut back on your portions. We are just making our plates too big. So maybe we need a follow-up lecture on this and how to build a smaller plate and not just a better one. And this is really what it comes down to. We're all experts. We have to trust our senses here. How do we build a better plate? We eat every day. Everyone has food that they like and they don't like. When they cannot afford or access, that's what affects equity. And we're hearing a lot about this, and we're going to hear more about it as food prices really push people out of some of the foods that they've come to love and really enjoy. Biological influences, yes, think about this. We talked about some of the factors that go into this here, and reiterating them, the availability is probably the most interesting thing. Temptation is another one. At the beginning of the year, we always see all these diet programs that come out after the new year. There's a reason for that, because people have indulged themselves in traditional meals. They've overdone it a little bit with alcohol and food during the holidays. So we need to think about what is on our plate and what happened before it got there. Certainly, we want our food to be secure. We want food and adequate food and health to be a basic human right. This is going back to FDR. The World Health Organization has certainly said that we're going to have challenges with nutritional food. What's wrong with this? This is the aspect that I want you to peel that onion back a little bit and think about it. We have all kinds of challenges, from drought to water to too much rain in places that don't need it, not enough where we do need it, water supply, just the farming of it as well. Very interesting graphic here. Look at, we throw away over 4 million apples, just apples we throw away. And you've got a man there in that cartoon, clearly overweight there, throwing away what looks like a mango, which would be an exotic food for many people. And you have a poor starving child there that's just sort of thinking, how am I going to survive the day with this? Our food marketers definitely go into making a better plate, but often they go into making our food choices and what we put on the table very, very deceptive. One more sort of acronym here, and this is the 4 Ps of any type of marketing. So whether you're selling a necktie or a dress or shoes or a brand new frozen meal, we need to think about these 4 Ps. Now, the first thing is, who is our target market? Well, that the market that everyone wants is that 18 to 30-year-old. And if you make a better looking product, if it's more convenient, if it's tastier, if it has more of a crunch factor, you're going to probably able to push that product out pretty quickly. Put your radar up and just watch the advertising. Who are they who are they marketing to? How are they marketing? Who are the people in the ads? What does the food look like? What's the setting that they're putting it in? So price has not been a real deterrent in a marketing mix here. For the longest time, up until just about 2 years ago, people could put whatever price they wanted on a product. And if it were packaged correctly, they probably could move it. Go down the juice aisle or the enhanced water aisle and just take a look. I saw a bottled water claimed to be artesian water runs $8 a liter. This is madness that we're looking at in some of these things. So price wasn't a real deterrent, but it is going to be. And a lot of marketing, food marketers are going to be tapping into that. My mother constantly complains about this. The prices are going up and the packaging is getting smaller. Yes, because if they push the price too high, people are just simply not going to purchase it any longer. They're going to be making moves to generic brands or off brands. Place doesn't necessarily mean location. Place means placement. And the next time you go to the grocery store, I want you to pay particular attention to how they are either helping us, more often they're hindering us in building a better plate. So placement means how is it placed in relation to other products in the market? So think about when you go to the checkout aisle, what's there? Well, there are all kinds of impulse items. There's candy bars and there's those ridiculous magazines and there's little things that maybe we don't need, they're impulse items. If you go down the cereal aisle, look at where the expensive sugary cereals are that are designed for kids. They're at kids' eye level. For us as adults, the gourmet stuff, the new stuff is on the end cap and they want you to nearly trip over it. So that's what I mean. How is this product placed in relationship to another? When we build our better plate, do we use 3 different types of green vegetables? No, we're looking at that's location on the plate. But what I'm thinking about is the placement. If it's in season, they're probably going to put it right up front. For instance, right now, strawberries are in season and we'll soon see peaches and apricots. Well, they're going to be placed up front. And because they're seasonal and because they need to move that product, they're going to place it in a way where you can't miss it. Promotion, what are we doing to promote it? Is it advertising? Is it coupons? Is it digital coupons? How do we get those new items onto our plate? And food marketers are very, very good at this. And the last thing is the product. Is it a product that's well tested? Is it something that people are going to look for? Is it something they're interested in? Is there going to be an educational learning curve on something new? Remember quinoa, when it first was introduced to the market, nobody could pronounce it. Nobody knew what it is. They tried to rinse it in the sink and it all went down the drain because it's so tiny. We see products like this all the time that are happening. The faux meats that are out there, the vegan items that are coming out there, the gluten-free items. There's an education curve that goes into this. So you'll look at food very, very differently when you go to the grocery store. More social determinants of this that we've looked at as well. What's the literacy? What's your early childhood education? Is your food secure? Do you have access to healthy options? We've seen this. Unfortunately, we saw this in a recent incident in Buffalo. And that store was in what we call a food desert there. They knew that people had to go to this particular store. So this is a problem if people don't have access to this. Once again, on the far right, the access to care. Are we getting good food? Are we getting good nutritional food? Do we have access to putting food on our plate that's going to make it a better plate? We are deluged with food advertising. You could sit at home and probably, again, reference to that food being poison or medicine. Just sit and just put a little scorecard. How many ads are there for pharmaceuticals and how many ads are there for food? Well, is it poison or is it the best medicine that we can possibly use? Organic, fat-free, sugar-free, made with real fruit. No nitrates, non-GMO, heart healthy. All of these we have to be very, very skeptical about. We talked about this when we talked about demon foods. We need to be very, very conscientious. The next time you pick up a bottle of juice, turn it around. And the first thing I want you to notice is how much real juice is in it. I have seen products that say mango, orange juice or that type of thing, and you turn it around and there's less than 5% juice in it. So be very conscientious of that. All of these labels, they're colorful, they're bright. They're using all these little trigger words here to make us buy these products. Are they contributing to making your plate better, or is it all just a smoke and mirrors game? Junk food, boy, this was coined probably 50 years ago here, and there's been this trend toward restrictions. Certainly in Europe, they are much further ahead on this. We are trying to legislate this, and I just don't think that's going to happen. In New York City, they wanted to legislate the size of a soda. They wanted to reduce the fat and the calories and the size and this type of thing. And that's just simply not going to work. The more you tell people what they can't have, the more they're going to push back. Just look at any 5-year-old. Or how about if we look at prohibition? We told people they couldn't drink, they couldn't make it, they couldn't sell it, they couldn't buy it, they couldn't consume it. Well, unfortunately, that lasted about 13 years, but prohibition was a disaster from an economic standpoint. The marketing that we see as well, this is very interesting. These are real pictures of their advertisements from some of the fast food versus what you actually get. Now, I know we've all experienced this before. We go in and we see this beautiful product that's being offered by one of the fast food, and you get it home and it looks like somebody sat on this for the last quarter of a basketball game. Here's one of Burger King. The advertisement on the left shows this beautiful, well-constructed burger. That's how I would put a burger together. That's how I want it to look and taste and even feel like when I'm building a better plate. The actual burger is not particularly truthful to it. This photographer, this researcher, he took this from the most attractive angle, if you can believe that. So one of the more interesting ones here as well is Jack in the Box, their tacos here. Chances are that's what they probably look like when in all actuality here. The last one here is very interesting. McDonald's deluxe of 1/3 pound here. Look at the picture on the right here. The box, the burger, the way that it's advertised, it wouldn't even fit into that box. And it'd have to be pushed down. And if you've ever watched them put these together, it looks nothing like these, and we let them get away with it. So be very, very careful. Don't be fooled by that. For me, obviously, putting together a elegant meal certainly starts with the food quality. I want it to be unique. I want it to be the best or a better meal than they had the last time, or a repeat of something that they had before. Here we look at what goes into our health here, some socioeconomic factors. All of these things go into the building a better plate, not only from a health standpoint, but health care, the income, our community, where do we eat, how do we eat together. Probably the most important aspect of the S in pestle is the social aspect. We've got to slow down. We've got to start eating together. We went through sort of this strange COVID period where we weren't eating. And it really hurt me to my heart as a chef, because it's one of the most wonderful things that we can do. We can talk and we can share, we can confront problems, we can solve problems. And just that sense of companionship is so important. And I hope that we get back to this in a really good way that sets a better table for us, that allows us to share food and share ideas and just share the enjoyment. And all of it begins with building a better plate. So whether it's a simple mom and pop restaurant, whether it's a traditional ethnic restaurant, whether it's a light snack, whether it's just drinks with friends, even coffee. Boy, Starbucks, you love them or hate them, but they certainly brought the social aspect of what Europeans, Italians in particular, knew about getting together and sitting and enjoying a cup of coffee. This tradition goes back to the early origins of coffee and when it was first introduced into Europe from Africa, and the coffee houses became places of thought and discussion and sometimes controversy. It always hurts me a little bit when I see people sitting across from each other and they're just texting. They're not even engaging in each other, or they're sitting there with their computer and they're not really even aware that they're in a social setting, or people that are talking too loud and don't even realize that they're in a social setting. So the social aspect can be really important. We talked a little bit about food marketing. We have to make these decisions. Food marketers, that's not their job. Their job, as far as they're concerned, how do we build a better plate, is take it out of the microwave, take it out of the freezer, microwave it, and serve it. Convenience is king right now. And everybody knows that. We're eating through drive-thrus. There is food everywhere. I'm not sure that that's the best way to set what we would consider a better plate. Food equity is another expression that you're hearing a lot about here. And really, this is the concept that all people have the ability and opportunity to grow and to consume healthful, affordable, and culturally significant foods. We live in this amazing breadbasket of food and culture. We should be embracing that. Unfortunately, many parts of the world just don't have that. There's the dichotomy of society that we're looking at as well. We have a global food system where 2 billion people are undernourished, where another billion are over consuming. This was the basis of my class on demon foods. What are we supposed to be eating? Are we eating too much of it? Are we eating the right kind of food? Why are kids malnourished? Why are kids overweight? Why do they have diabetes? All these factors go into it. We need to think about what goes into it to make a better plate. Here's a really good example, a graphic example of what equality is versus equity. And certainly I would, if I were to Photoshop this, I would take out the people and put food there, because certainly food equity is an important part. Here's some really, really fun stuff on food technology. Boy, how do we build a better plate? Food researchers and food technologists, they are constantly looking for new and interesting ways. You're probably familiar with what we call molecular gastronomy, reducing foods to purees and changing their real physical state, maybe vapors of apples, for instance, or liquefied zucchini. These are all things that we've done in some manner, shape, or form, but where we've taken this is a really, really brave new world here. We've got virtual reality restaurants where you're putting on headsets and you might be eating a hamburger while sitting in front of the Berlin Wall, for instance, or eating your chop suey against the backdrop of the Great Wall of China. 3D printing is certainly part of that. Online ordering, boy, everybody is directing you to their apps. There are some restaurants where they don't even have printed menus anymore. I have a collection of menus going back to the 1940s, paper menus, beautiful menus. And when you put them online, it just sort of takes away part of that aspect of building a better meal there. I want to feel and touch it. And even sometimes the stains on a menu tell a certain story. So certainly technology is sweeping the world. Those of you that are sci-fi fans, I'm one of them. This was a kind of campy movie, science fiction movie called Soylent Green. And Soylent Green, I think, was done in 1974, and it was set in the future. And it's been around for so long. I hope I'm not spoiling the story for you, but the basic plot is that it's the year 2022, ironically. The place is New York City and the population is 40 million. Well, obviously there's lots and lots of challenges. And one of the biggest challenges in this movie is a shortage of food. We're just simply not able to produce enough food for the city of New York. So it's a mystery, it's a detective story, it's science fiction, it's very apocalyptic, it's very depressing. That how are they going to solve this problem? Well, a company comes up with the secret and they create Soylent Green, and Soylent Green is discovered to be made from a secret ingredient. And I will show you just a quick clip of that. This is a movie that absolutely needs to be remade. It's so relevant right now. And here is the climactic moment of the movie.
Tell everybody. Listen to me, Hatcher. You gotta tell them Soylent Green is people. We gotta stop them somehow.
Yes, Soylent Green.
Are you haunted by your
Soylent
cable
Green
service? Have you
is
noticed strange,
people.
frightening things
Soylent
on your
Green
monthly bill?
is
Do you
people.
experience feelings of dread?
Let
That's why your
me
cable
get
box.
out of this. We're
If
going to
the
take a little
answer is
break
yes,
here. Anyway,
what
let
do
me
you call
get out of
DirecTV
this
Stream. Now
clip
save
here,
$30 over 2
and
months.
we will we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been
As you surrender your
exploring
body,
here. So
what
if
music?
anybody has any questions, let me get out of screen share here, and we will talk about some of these interesting aspects that we've looked at, and then we're going to get into some of the plating. So if anybody has any questions, let's take a quick 5-minute break here, give you a chance to get some Soylent Green, or maybe prepare yourself some sweet tea if it's not too early for a glass of wine. I'll refresh my palate here a little bit, and we'll be back just in a couple of minutes. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat. I'm going to send you my information here in the meantime.
Now that was worth the wait, wasn't it, everybody? I'm so glad that we were able to have this program, that everything got worked out. This has been the week of a little bit of confusion, but I enjoy his programs, and I'm so glad to see so many of you here today that were here the other day, and those of you that couldn't make it the other day that are here today. So that's even better. But come up with some questions for him. You know, one of the things I wanted to ask him about is sometimes you go to the grocery store now and the vegetables are wrapped in plastic wrap. And I don't like that. You know, I really, oh, here's Larry.
Oh, I agree with you, Victoria. I hate them. I want to be able to select my own and touch it.
That's exactly right.
Yes. Because I don't know what's been packaged. Who's made those decisions? Is it a chef? Is it just somebody working on an assembly line? Strawberry manufacturer. This has been strawberry packaging companies. This has been proven that they always put the most beautiful strawberries on top.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, they are packaged in plastic so you can turn them over and take a look at them. The largest blueberries are always put on top. Now, I understand that they want to showcase their product in the best way that you can, but peaches, I would never just go to the grocery store, grab a peach and put it in my grocery basket. I got to look at it. More importantly, I have to smell it.
I smell, oh, yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was teaching culinary school, every single Friday, I told my class, and it was amazing. After 3, 4, 5 weeks, they still never saw it coming. I said, before you leave, everybody, I've got some homework, and they all groan. Oh, you know what? I got a busy weekend. I'm working. I said, your homework is whatever that you put into your mouth. I want you to smell it and taste it again for like it's the first time. And it's a wonderful way to think about making that better plate. What are we putting on our plate? Does it smell good? Does it taste good? And as many weeks as I would do that, they'd still groan, even though they knew what was coming. It wasn't really tough homework. So I would ask you to do the same.
I just find it exasperating. Why is there, what reason is there that everything, or practically everything, has the addition of salt and sugar? Everything.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And it is certainly one of the things that has contributed, not so much for us, but from the food manufacturers, because there's a cardinal rule, a very simple rule in the restaurant industry, and hopefully most businesses. For instance, if you are, for instance, Walmart shoppers or Whole Food shoppers or Amazon shoppers, think about the first time that you used that particular service. Maybe you had a buy one, get one free. Maybe you had a discount coupon. Maybe you were just going in for a grand opening. That's easy. The same thing with the restaurant. Anybody can get you to use their product or service the first time. It's bringing them back again. And food manufacturers have realized that sugar and salt are encoded in our physiological bodies. And when they took trans fats away, which are now banned, I'm concerned they're going to replace it with something else. Are they going to replace it with more sugar? Are they going to replace it with more salt? We need to look for other things. And you're right. And even when it says low sodium on it, well, still take a look at it. There's still
Yeah.
way too much sodium.
Yeah.
Sodium is going to be, it's going to be the real cause of problem for the next generation.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. What I do, for instance, I certainly keep canned soups around. Now, I keep cream of mushroom, cream of tomato, those around, and they're fine, but I know that I'm going to extend them. I know I'm going to use them in a casserole. So I may not need to add the salt or the sugar on the other side of it, but we need to be aware of that. Let me tell you a quick story that absolutely just solidifies what you just said. My mother is a very, very good cook, and she's a very good baker. And the last couple of years, she's been doing more experimental baking and things like that. And I wish she would just go back to the fundamentals, which she knows so well. But anyway, she gave me something a while back, and she said, "How was it the next day?" I said, "Honestly, Mom," I said, it was a little too sweet. And she said, "I followed the recipe." I said, "I know you probably did." So I did some research on it. And in fact, recipes that are being written today and published, they have 20 to 30% more salt or sugar than
Oh, wow.
25 years ago. The recipes
Wow.
themselves are doing that. And so we're getting used to this. And, I used to always accuse her, it was the butter. She had switched to margarine during that period.
Ugh.
And as a joke, every year I send her 25 pounds of real butter. I said, "Mom, you got to use real butter." But it's the salt and sugar. You're right. It's creeping up into everything. We have to be very conscientious.
It's exasperating. It's just exasperating.
Yeah, absolutely. Victoria, I don't see anything else in chat. So let me switch back and we will continue. If anybody needs to get up for any reason, by all means, of course, and keep those questions coming there. So some more on the food technology. There's some really, really interesting aspects. As I mentioned, I was in, excuse me, Washington, D.C., and I went into the Museum of Natural History because about 10 years ago, they set up a beautiful exhibit there. One of them that you may all know, they deconstructed Julia Child's kitchen, and they put it in the Smithsonian. And it's a wonderful, wonderful exhibit. It's about the size of maybe your living room, but historically and culturally and culinarily, it's very interesting. A couple of years ago, they added a new exhibit called Food, the First 100 Years. And it was really fascinating because they talked about the way that food and food production and food consumption and food trends have changed. And America has certainly been at the forefront of this. The Europeans are much more concerned about in the field. Matter of fact, many European countries, they have products and specialty legendary items that are protected by law. We certainly know the French wine laws are very, very protective. What can you grow? What variety? How much can you harvest? How much can you produce, et cetera? What can you call it? Fish, genetically modified salmon, forget it. You're not going to see it in Europe. It's basically just banned. Genetically modified vegetables and fruits, you're not going to see that as well. So we certainly have been at the forefront of this, and we can certainly blame Monsanto and Archer Daniels Midland and DuPont and that type of thing. But certainly some of these companies have brought us some really great things as well. We just have to make those decisions. What is going to go into a better plate? Look at these gorgeous tomatoes. I mean, it may be a rarity that we don't see freshly grown tomatoes. They're all going to be vine ripened. They're all going to be produced in hot houses and things like that. There's nothing more wonderful than growing tomatoes on your own and being able to pick them. Things like corn or wheat, well, it's just not reasonable for us, but genetically modified foods certainly are controversial items. Do they make a better plate? I can't answer that. I just don't know that we have enough information yet. Some things that may be concerning for you when we're thinking about building a better plate. In the upper left there, that is a completely automated, robotic chicken processing line. The chickens are genetically absolutely identical. They can be caught, for lack of a better word, and then they are processed, which is just a food manufacturer's a code word for slaughtered. And I'm not a vegetarian. I understand it. And we've talked about Food Inc., and it's certainly an important book, an important documentary. I encourage you to watch it. But the technology And because of the genetics that go into this, we are seeing these chickens absolutely, and then they can be further broken down into uniform breast pieces, leg pieces, thigh pieces, etc. We've had hydroponics, we've had hothouse vegetables for a very, very long time. We're definitely going to see more and more of this. I have a little arrow garden that I start my plants with, and boy, they sure produce nice stuff. But eventually I want them to go outside into the garden where I can get into the dirt with them a little bit. So some of the things that we've addressed, and from the genetics side of this as well, we're looking for better nutrition. There's something called nutraceuticals. Imagine broccoli that has estrogen built into it, or imagine you've got a candy bar that has additional calcium in it for osteoporosis or things like that. These are things that are really happening there. Will we crack the diabetes code? Well, unfortunately, I'm a little pessimistic about that. There's too much money in diabetes and diabetes drug treatment, unfortunately. So to your point about salt and sugar, there's no incentive whatsoever for them to cut back on salt and sugar. And at the far right, that is actually a tabletop version of a 3D food printer. I've been saying this for 2 years, so I'm going to change my position on this. I think that within 5 years, there will be a home version of 3D printed food that will be just as common as buying a first generation microwave or a dishwasher. I've seen these, I have tasted these for candy. Okay, I'm not so sure that I want this for chicken. The other thing, those of you that I just revolted, I apologize. I've been wanting to do a class on this for the longest time. I've been watching and listening and reading about this movement for a long time. Insects are here, and the majority of the world consumes some type of insect. Certainly this is third world. We know these as novelties. I have eaten a deep fried tarantula because I live in Arizona. I've had a gelatinized scorpion. Yes, I've eaten a deep fried cockroach. These grubs and things like that, they're packed full of protein. We just are going to have a really hard time getting past this. There is cricket flour out there now. It's going to be one of those baby steps that we need to take. And there are lots of people that are working in this. I don't know if this locust and grasshopper burger on the left is ever going to be accepted. But it certainly is something that lots and lots of people are thinking about. They can produce a tremendous amount of this as well. Certainly less impactful to our society, but I just don't know. I don't have time to show you this clip, but basically it was a clip of this company, particularly in the Netherlands, that is making this cricket flour. I encourage you to take a look at it. And the scientist, he says one thing that is sort of true. He said, once you try it and get past the ick factor, he said, well, then you can move on with it. It's kind of like trying asparagus or caviar for the first time. You either decide you like it or you don't. What certainly is going to be more common. Now, this makes a beautiful, better looking plate. Does it make the food taste better? Well, food texture is really, really important. As one of our senses here, the problem with 3D printed food that I have had is texture. It all sort of has a similar texture. In a nutshell, how does this work? Well, they take the food, whether it's zucchini or beef or chicken or chocolate, they turn it into a puree, and then you have these canisters of this or containers that go into these machines, and you program it to basically make any shape, any size that you want on this. What's the advantage of it? Well, right now it's sort of in its artistic state to begin with. It is a way for us to take some of these foods, maybe the lesser parts of vegetables or protein, and use it to make a puree on this. Well, here, back to the point that you made earlier, is that this needs a lot of salt and it needs a lot of sugar because it just doesn't have the real texture with it. If it looks a little bit like hospital food or pureed food, it does. It's going to take a while. I don't know what is going to be the breakthrough point on this as far as acceptance. Everything I've seen makes a better plate because it looks better. but it's missing the texture. The flavor is there. As a matter of fact, the flavor is overly enhanced. So that might be a problem for us. In the upper right there, you see those canisters that I was talking about. So there's cucumbers and there's carrots, there's corn in there. That is the tabletop version that some chefs are now experimenting with. Pastry chefs are the ones that really, really seem to love these. This was my inspiration for that architecture of food class that we've talked about before. So it certainly gives chefs a new way to make a better plate. Does it satisfy all the other ones? I don't know. I will show you this short little clip here. Very interesting to take a look at.
I'm traveling to Eindhoven in Holland. I want to find out more about 3D printed food and the role it could play in the future of food production.
So I'm here to meet two young university students who have formed a company called Upprinting. They take wasted food that nobody wants. It's just going to become garbage. And instead they turn it into fancy, luxurious food that high-end restaurants want to use.
Vita Brücken and Elzelinde van Doleveerd started their company in late 2018. It could play a part in recycling some of the 1.3 billion tons of food that gets wasted worldwide every year.
So in Europe, the average is about 20% food waste, and then worldwide it's 1/3.
Here, they blend food waste together with seasonings for taste and turn it into a paste, which is then used to print the food.
We can use this technology to create attractive food that really gains value and people are willing to eat it again.
After printing, the food is baked and dried, giving it a second life.
Currently, it's not quick enough for like mass production, but that might be a possibility. But we're first focusing on the restaurants.
Restaurants, along with bakeries and caterers, are also a key client of nearby company Byflow. It sells its 3D printer worldwide at a cost of 3,900 euros.
Hi, I'm Patrick.
Hi, how are you?
For now, it's really like beautiful food. It's food that cannot be made by mold or by hand, for example.
But developments are ongoing. Experts predict the 3D food printing market will be worth over $500 million by 2023.
I don't believe it's going to stay these small printers. We're already looking into ways, for example, to make food based on your DNA. We should be able in the future to make food that is good for your body, different than for your neighbor or for your children or for your husband or wife.
And this ganache is for me.
Oh my, it's very good. I feel sort of bad destroying the FT like this.
Beyond beautiful food, 3D printers' ability to improve the appearance and edibility of healthy foods could also enhance the diets of the young, the obese, or the elderly. In Sweden, for example, 3D printed food will be trialed at care homes by the end of this year. Also, protein sources less damaging to the environment than livestock, such as insects or algae, could be printed into more palatable forms. But I'd like to see some 3D printed food at an actual restaurant. Jasper Korschman is head chef at The Lounge.
We use it up from the butter and the bread to the starters, to the main courses and the desserts. We want it as an additive to our dishes, just the extra, the surprise element in our creations that we make every day.
This cream cheese will take 5 minutes to create.
You can just see all the different layers, so it's like a bit of a maze.
Yeah.
But it's early days for 3D printed food, so it's still very much about embellishments and marketing.
Something you can show your restaurant with, you make an advertisement with, people want to see, are curious in what it is. Thank you. You're welcome.
Right now, it's hard to say whether it will scale up, but it is going to be an industry worth keeping an eye on over the next 5 to 10 years.
It's very good.
So the future is here, folks. We're definitely seeing some very, very interesting things that are going on. Certainly robots are being used in restaurants well beyond the revolving sushi tray, for instance. We're seeing all kinds of interesting things. I actually experienced one of these at the airport. And if you've traveled internationally, I know there's some that are showing up in LA as well. is this making a better plate, or is this devolving into something else? This is an automated pizza vending machine. Take a look at the technology that's going on with this.
Let's Pizza is the only machine in the world capable of making healthy and genuine pizzas using entirely fresh ingredients. Once you have chosen your desired pizza among the choice available, the pizza is kneaded, rolled out, topped, cooked and served, starting with the water and flour, in less than 3 minutes. Let's Pizza offers a choice among 4 different types of flavors that can be chosen each time from a wide menu with an overall autonomy of 90 pizzas. The system of payment accepts coins and banknotes, provides change, and is compatible with other payment systems such as vending keys, tokens, or other means. Once payment and the choice of pizza has been made, Let's Pizza mixes the water and flour and begins kneading. The resulting dough, untouched by human hands, is then pressed and rolled out to create a 27-centimeter diameter disc shape. At this stage, the oven begins preheating and the topping process begins. First, the tomato is added and then the pizza is topped according to the customer's choice. Leavening is instantaneous and occurs in the oven. And in less than 2 minutes, the pizza is already in the oven. As you can see, the pizza was prepared without being touched by any hands and in a human-free environment. The infrared oven cooks at 380 degrees, guaranteeing a uniform process in about a minute. Whilst the pizza is cooking, the handy takeaway box is prepared, in which the pizza will be deposited once it's finished cooking. And in less than 3 minutes, a healthy, genuine Italian pizza is served, with the guarantee of total hygiene. And for those who want to eat their pizza straight away, Let's Pizza provides a very handy pizza cutter, oregano and napkin. To guarantee the maximum quality and hygiene, water is provided in sealed, controlled and certified sacks. All the toppings are single dose and vacuum packed, made with fresh ingredients, stored in a ventilated fridge. None of the products are frozen, guaranteeing maximum fragrance and quality. Let's Pizza, the healthy pizza, the Italian pizza.
So yes, I have seen those, and just in the interest of full disclosure, as a Sicilian, of course, there are 6 million people sitting at the base of Mount Vesuvius in Naples, the home of the classic pizza. I felt so much Catholic guilt that I called the Pope before I tried that, but there we are. That's what's happening. One of the other really cool things that's going into making what I would consider a better plate is personalized nutrition. I had a lot of young culinary students that wanted to become personal chefs, and I encouraged them to take an advanced degree in nutrition because people are going back to thinking about, what are we eating? Is it medicine or is it poison, as we began? And making a better plate certainly has to do with our personalized nutrition, whether that's based upon our genome, our family history, health history, etc. But there's lots of things that are going into it. And of course, all of this has a cause and effect. If we build a better plate, what does that actually mean? And that's what we're really trying to explore here. Restaurants are giving us more and more options here, certainly recipe sharing. There's a tremendous amount of information out there, how to eat for your genome, how to eat for your own body type, your lifestyle, etc. This is a burgeoning field here. For many of us that are, past 50 or 60, is it too late? Well, it depends on lots and lots of factors. I think I mentioned to you last time. I'm doing some recipe development for K-12 schools using impossible meat, and I'm having a real fun time with it, talking with young people about what they want in their cafeterias, and we're certainly seeing some good impact with that. All of these things that are going into what food manufacturers think may be a better plate, we have to be informed. We're going to have to actually make our own decisions about this. What are we putting on our plate? What is the story behind all of it? Certainly the environmental concerns, we'd have to come back and look at this, but we know all of these steps that go into what is a sustainable local food system. I'm a huge advocate of this, and buying local and buying seasonal. Victoria and I were talking about peaches, and there's certain foods that I just want when they're in season, and that's the time to really use them. So we also need to be conscientious. What are we putting on our plate? How is it affecting the planet? We can talk about climate change all day here with this, whether it's methane or water use or fertilizers. Vegetables and fruits are becoming more expensive because we can't get the fertilizer that we have needed to make those beautiful tomatoes and strawberries and things like that. So you push it down one place, it's going to come back somewhere else. The food waste is an interesting area that we'd have to spend another whole session on that to take a look at this. But we all, as people are certainly getting into composting, and young people today are much more interested in this. I think it's something that we need to think about at the grocery store. If you're used to seeing that beautiful cover of Gourmet magazine, sometimes we need to look for the less beautiful stepsister when it comes to produce. And that's the great thing about farmers markets. Food banks, pantries, storage shelves, and things like that. They are trying to take some of this food product out of the system and hopefully use it in more interesting ways that it still has some beautiful life left to it. And when we go to the grocery store, we have lots and lots and lots of choices here. How do we pick the best items on there? And we've looked at how do we make a better plate? Well, certainly we want to use our senses. We all eat. We all know what we like, what our family likes. Continue to do that. Prepare the food with love and attention and care. Watch your cost on it. Divide up your plate so that we're preparing a nutritious plate there. Experiment with some new items. And think about, where does your food come from? Not just where it's going to the dining room table. This is an area that a lot of restaurateurs are very, very interested in now. How are the people that prepare, that grow, that harvest, that package our food? What is their contribution to building a better plate? In most of the world, this is what we think of as a grocery store. I love shopping this way. The food that's come less than 25 miles from its particular source. We just really don't have this concept. Farmers markets have certainly exploded, but they're running into all kinds of challenges. And the irony of farmers markets in building a better plate is that many of these growers are outside of the city area, and they have to transport their food into urban centers so that we get that taste of the country. So I know it seems a little oxymoronic, but if you live in an area that is rural, we've always known this. You go to your neighbors and you exchange food or food products for something else. But in other parts of the world, that final 5 miles is the most intensive part of it. How do we set a better plate? Well, we looked at what the plate should look like there. Think about the food production of it. The last aspect of it is just something I threw in to complete that pestle model that we were talking about. We have lots and lots of guidelines. There are certainly some good things that the government has given us, food safety. Certainly we've seen some missteps here, particularly the baby formula, for instance. The other legal issues that we've seen there, drug testing, the use of edible cannabis related products, growing food costs, labor is really, really hurting us. So all of that goes into what does a better plate look like there. Another cartoon there, poverty in most of the world, poverty in America. We probably are just consuming too much. We certainly can reduce it. We are a global society. We need to think about what is the better plate of the future going to look like here? Well, these are some of the items that we sort of took a look at here. Root vegetables are going to be very, very big. Here in the Southwest, we're seeing more and more cactus, desert indigenous plants. Mushrooms have been very, very big. And I'm not talking just about button mushrooms and portobellos. We're going to see them used in many, many different types of ways. There are many varieties that we have never seen before that we're going to be using as a good fiber and protein source. To me, that is the epitome of what a better plate looks like. It's got texture, it's got color. You can almost smell the freshness of those ingredients. Certainly it has incredible taste, even sound to some of those. Cracking open a pomegranate is one of those really special seasonal treats for me. This is how we do it. Half of our plate should be non-starchy vegetables. We definitely want that. We want lean proteins. We want to add the grains in there, of course. We've seen this graphic. It certainly is important for us. Add some water to it, an occasional glass of wine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Choose your oils carefully. We want healthy oils to make our plates look better there. How do we create this? Well, using those products of grains and beans, we want to create some height on the plate. And that's what's so great about grains and beans. We can mold them. We can put them into small ramekins, any of those plastic containers you have or bowls. Push the grains or beans into that and invert them on the plate to get that little height that you're looking for. They're a wonderful way to play around with. Our vegetables, play with textures on them. The texture of broccoli is completely different than the texture of peppers, or sweet potatoes is very different from acorn squash. Romaine lettuce is completely different from chard. So we have this amazing palette here of texture. So texture is an important part. Use contrasting colors. I'm so tired of seeing plates that are just beige, beige, beige. I scream sometimes when I'm in restaurants, could I have a sprig of parsley? Anything to give it a little bit of color there. And match the presentation. We want to cut back on our proteins if you're not doing it already. I would guess that probably all of us have cut back on red meat in particular. We need to serve smaller size portions. A portion, according to the government and health experts for protein, is something about the size of a deck of cards. And that is a good rule, generally somewhere in between 4 and 5 ounces. We need to certainly cut back on that. Nobody needs to be eating a 2-pound T-bone steak. Choose your fat carefully here as well. I am an olive oil chef. You all know that. I use very, very little butter. I don't have any problem with it. I just prefer the versatility of my oil. So use butter sparingly. Dairy has become tremendously expensive on them, but we need to do some exchanges as well. So switch out some of these, and I'll send you some of these slides for you to examine a little bit more and think about it. Don't deny yourself. Desserts, we have that need for sugar. It certainly is very, very satisfying. Choose the right size plate for them. Sometimes smaller plates are one of the first things people talk about when they're doing dieting to begin with, but sometimes we in the restaurant industry, we love putting smaller portions on great big plates. It should be the other way. We should be putting good size portions on the right size plate so that it looks appetizing and it looks filling. So play around with that, play around with the textures that we're looking for. And don't forget to dine together. A memorable meal can be defined as one that tastes great, although we know we eat with our eyes and our nose. We think of these beautiful media posts of food. We can do this. We can create beautiful looking plates. We can look at new foods, experiment with something new. When I go to my ethnic restaurant, if it's something I'm not familiar with, I'm probably just going to do a quick Google search on it. If I don't know what it is, I'm going to turn it around. Usually they're printed in French and German and sometimes Chinese, the ingredients. Just try something new with them and experiment with some international cuisines. These are cuisines, you know, I love ethnic foods. I have never met an ethnic cuisine that I don't like. And you're going to discover all kinds of wonderful combinations and textures that we may not see in our fairly homogenized American diet there. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be complicated. Those are very simple presentations there that certainly make for a beautiful plate, make for a better looking plate. So we just need to be a little bit more mindful in what we're putting on the table. And now that you really understand what goes into building a better plate, makes for putting it together a little bit easier. Does presentation actually matter? Well, as a chef, I would say absolutely yes. I have seen some really messy presentations. I've seen beautiful presentations that you just sort of want to stop and take photographs. Food is the most Instagrammable category of anything. People love taking photographs of their food. I'm waiting for a Saturday Night Live skit where they're sitting at a restaurant and they're all presented this beautiful food, and they're all just taking pictures and pictures and posting them, and they forget to eat it. Would make a funny aspect. How do we make food beautiful? Well, we use squeeze bottles, we use purees, we can stack. In the architecture of food, I go into this a lot more, just building it. Look at the picture in the center. Those are just some pickled beets there. There's some radishes, some edamames. They just have a little bit of artistry added to them. The spaghetti over on the left, rather than just a big bowl a la Lady and the Tramp, it's just presented with a little bit of height. That's all we really need to make this. Yes, these are beautiful chef presentations here. Do they make a better plate nutritionally? Maybe. Are they made with integrity? Are they made with something that's going to satisfy our senses? Yes, absolutely. So the backside of this is the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit. For the manufacturers, they want profit, but we can certainly, profit not only has to do with money, it also has to do with satisfaction. Are we taking good care of the planet on every plate that we're putting in front of our loved ones? Do we love the people? Are we sharing that joy with them? Absolutely. We have choice to make. Food can be the slowest form of poison on the right, or the best medicine. We have to make that choice. So those are the things that go into what I would consider making a better plate. Every time I do this presentation, I'm very conscientious in my next 2, 3, 4 meals that I put together. And I hope you will be the same. Think about how we are putting our food together. What goes into what we would consider a better plate? So I know your radar is up with this, and you're going to look at food in very, very different ways here. Alice asked, when do you cook with a vegetable oil instead of olive oil? Good question. I'm one of those chefs that I have probably 14 or 15 different olive oils from all over the world. I'm looking for color, I'm looking for taste, I'm looking for texture, I'm looking for availability with them. My favorite olive oils come from Syria. I've had a hard time getting those, of course, because of geopolitical concerns. Libyan olive oil is what the Romans used. And of course, that's become nearly impossible to get. Depends on what is your final goal. If you're looking for a very light flavor that's to glaze or to enhance the food, you may want something from a little bit further north, France, Spain. If you're looking for something that's really hearty for a vinaigrette or that's very flavorful, look for those from the Mediterranean or from even North Africa. We had talked earlier with my friend BJ, and I want to do a class on not only the Mediterranean, but also specifically on the Middle East there as well. And all those olive oils, the Romans have known this for 2,000 years. It's just, we're just catching up with them. Great question. Anyone else? Questions? I thank you all for joining us. Please feel free. I will send out some recipes to Victoria. I'm going to include some photos this time, some screenshots, Victoria, of some of these.
Be great.
Couple of
send them, I'll share them.
And you can share them. And Victoria and I will be back with you in June. I have to check my email again, but I think we agreed on a date.
I think it was June 8th.
Okay.
I think that was the date that you had available, and we were able to accommodate that.
Good. I'll circle back with you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for supporting these programs. It's always a delight to talk with you. Stay well. I know we got crazy weather going on just about everywhere. From Phoenix, the only thing I'm going to be able to report for you for the next 4 months, it's either sunny and warm or sunny and hot. That's all we get. So that's what it's going to be for us. So thank you all very much. Bon appetit, and build a better plate every time that you put food in front of your loved ones.
Thank you so much, Larry. You've inspired all of us. I'm sorry. Go ahead, you guys.
Bon
That's what I was
appetit.
going to say. Inspirational.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Bon appetit to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk to you soon, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Happy Memorial Day.
And to you all as well. Thank you.
Thanks.